Imagine standing on the edge of a plane, tens of thousands of feet high in the sky. You're at such a high elevation that you can't even see the ground. Before you know it, you have to jump out of the plane, hoping you don't die. You hope that the instructor strapped behind you all of a sudden doesn't forget to deploy the parachute, and even if the parachute is deployed, you hope you land in the designated landing area, not in the middle of the lake that happens to be closer than your liking to the place where you're supposed to land. Maybe I'm exaggerating the feelings that come from skydiving, but coming from a person who's afraid of heights, this is quite a big jump, literally. I went skydiving last summer, and given that I oftentimes feel motion sickness during a 30-minute car ride, I couldn't imagine how it would feel like jumping out of a plane. This wasn't necessarily a positive form of curiosity. Skydiving was an experience that I will never forget. This experience didn't only show me how terrifying it was to jump out of a plane, but also how important it was to step out of my comfort zone and try things that are, well, very difficult. This event also made me realize how important it was to cherish every single moment, because experiences like these only have a handful of them. Whether it's because of fear or because of thrill, I can vividly remember this experience. Before we got onto the plane, I was feeling pretty confident. I mean, how hard could it be? All I had to do was get onto the plane, enjoy the plane ride up, skip over to the edge of the plane, and pretty much just do a belly flop. Unlike what I was expecting, my confidence level started to diminish the higher and higher we went, and I made an accurate graph to represent that. I was sitting on the side close to the open plane door, and the bench I was sitting on had no safety belt, so I started to worry about slipping out of the instructor's straps, sliding off of the bench, and falling out. The good views in the beginning of the ride didn't seem so good anymore. Finally, we got to the peak, and it was time to jump out. I didn't want to chicken out, and I feel like my acting was at its peak during that time, because when the instructor asked if I was ready to jump out of the plane, I somehow enthusiastically replied yes. Before I could tell the instructor that I was just kidding and I thought that jumping was a really bad idea, we jumped. As you can see, I have a great fake smile on my face. Through the chaos going on inside my brain and the air whipping against me, I consciously tried to think about how this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The sun was gleaming super bright, and the sky was a beautiful shade of blue. This was my first and hopefully not last time actually being among the clouds. The few seconds of falling created a new perspective in my head of the sky that can't be conveyed unless it's experienced. Once we got into a position in which we were facing down, the view and the feeling was actually great, unlike the feeling 5 seconds earlier. I was actually screaming in joy in my head. However, when I actually tried doing it, a huge gust of air filled up in my mouth. I think that the bright blue sky and the intense rush of adrenaline drowned my negative thoughts. One thing the instructors do before you jump out of the plane is they teach you what certain hand gestures mean. In my case, the gesture of opening the hand meant that I was supposed to stretch my arms apart. In this picture, the instructor was giving me that gesture, but in my mind, I was doing something more important. I was still processing things and trying to figure out if I was still alive. I was completely oblivious to what hand gesture he was showing me, and it looks like I'm in a deep form of meditation, and to be honest, I actually might have been. After realizing that this wasn't a dream, and I'd actually managed to jump out of a plane, I actually started enjoying myself. I was initially thinking that I would feel sick, as in my stomach is in my throat sick. However, since we were facing downwards, it was kind of like swimming, except there was no water, and you're staring down at the ground, which is thousands of feet away. In my opinion, the best part was when the instructor deployed the parachute. We suddenly slowed down, and this was one of the greatest moments in my life, knowing that the chances of landing safely had drastically increased. I acted as if I wasn't completely horrified a few seconds earlier. The view was also unforgettable. There were beautiful mountains in the background, a whole bunch of greenery, and I was actually thinking normally because I made sure that I hadn't swallowed any bugs while I was free falling. We flew around for a couple of minutes, we went over the lake, we spun in circles, and just enjoyed the precious seconds. Surprisingly, the instructor also trusted me enough to steer the parachute. I looked down at my feet, and there was some sort of satisfaction in my head because it actually looked like I was flying. As you all can probably tell from my experience, the concept of skydiving is very simple. There is, however, some science behind it, more specifically, the effects on the brain. According to Lauren Harkins from Skydiving Cross Keys, The extreme rush of emotions made by the situation causes the brain to release a zestful combination of chemicals, including adrenaline, serotonin, and dopamine. These chemicals are helpful in many ways and are essential to experience. Adrenaline is designed to help us survive in intense or extreme situations. When the brain senses a dangerous situation, adrenaline kicks in, and the hormone circulates through the body, causing instant physical changes. The chemical increases energy and awareness levels that increase cognitive functions. On top of all of that, adrenaline is also associated with increased immunity and fighting cancer cells. Serotonin is another chemical that influences common functions in the brain, including mood, sleep, and anxiety. This chemical is important because it can increase the calmness of a person's sleep cycle, and it can even fight depression. When you're done experiencing a daredevil or risky task, a chemical called dopamine kicks in. This chemical presents happiness and joy after completing a task that isn't risky or nerve-wracking. In this case, the feeling after you land after skydiving. I can tell you from experience that I felt very gratified after I landed safely. It's pretty evident that risk-taking or pushing your limits in terms of what terrifies you is very important and useful to experience. After undergoing the skydiving experience, I could tell that it had instant impacts on me. Directly after I was landed, I was ready to jump off of a plane again. I was still processing and admiring the fact that I had managed to jump out of a plane. I could picture myself doing crazy things, including playing Quidditch, the game in Harry Potter, even though that's not even a game in real life. Other than instant mental changes, I view skydiving as a guiding idea to help me through tough things. When I'm in a challenging situation, I try to picture myself standing on the edge of the plane, and believe me, I can vividly picture that. Although it seems like it would make things worse, it doesn't make my task seem bad relative to staring down at your possible death in a few minutes. The purpose of this talk isn't to ramble on and on about how great skydiving is. Sure, jumping off of a plane with a parachute strapped behind you is fun. However, the most exciting thing in my experience was the anxiousness I felt. I can tell you for sure that I had a contradicting opinion back then, but after looking back at it, the excitement of the experience came from the uncertainty. I knew what skydiving was, and I knew what I was supposed to do, but I never knew what was going to happen. The emotions I felt before, during, and after skydiving are what makes this experience so memorable. While the experience I had was great, the rush, the adrenaline, and the thrill that skydiving brought me can be obtained by many other things. You should be willing to find out what those things are for yourself. Sometimes it's essential to step out of your comfort zone, feel the emotions brought by an extreme experience, and try something that's associated with some risk. As a very influential fictional character named Sirius Black has said, "What is life without a little risk?" Thank you.